All right. Let's see if this is streaming. And that my voice is audible as well. And that my voice is audible. Bonus points for anybody that knows what this is. It's great, great, great song. Okay, that seems to be about the limit I get away with. A non-monetized video. Okay, Kizzume left me a reply to my latest video and a text, a comment, where he made a a rolling comment that he added to as he watched the video. And I was just thinking that I've been asked to do that instead of leaving different comments at every time, but yeah, very polite and with time codes. Oh, maybe I should bring up my video and click the time codes. No. So down below we get into some more points that I remember I want to talk about. Up here it's talking about social unrest and going into see, which part should I read? I mean, I don't want to read just the whole thing. You can go to my last video and read it as well. But let's see what I do want to convey. So let's say the kind of unrest that's occurring includes the left-wing version of the moral majority types. And what I'm saying about this in general is that all groups have their sanctimonious shut down the other side's shows and their raves, their way of partying. They don't shut down skateboarding, whatever. Every group has those kind of people. And as I was telling you about the stories of my activism in the 80s when I was in college, and it was the same kind of people. They just didn't have jobs at TV stations. They didn't have a cachet where anybody was really listening to them. Mostly they got ignored. And they're ignored less now. And good thing, because that's the pressure that's causing, sexual harassment policies and that established fair voting principles, which have been overturned now. So, okay, so that's probably confusing in the sense that it's not that those jerks are doing the good things. I'm saying they're part of the group. Every group has people like that. And so some of the people are going to be calling out, blah, 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 blah. Actually, politically correct became a term, entered the lexicon when I was in college. Before it was in the rest of the country on campuses. And originally it started out as like it was a dating advice, like don't date people that are politically incorrect, don't make relationships with the fascists and whatnot was the idea. And again, I objected that. That was one of the things that in that list of things because I'm anti-dogmatic. To me, the difference is between dogmatism and non-dogmatic ways of thinking. And to say politically correct, it's like, no, the liberal side was supposed to be the non-dogmatic side. So I agree, it's a problem when it becomes dogmatic. But it's not exactly dogmatic now when you have every kind of thing. I mean, we've had all kinds of movements. Back then, they had the women, spelling women with the Y and stuff. These things just come across the consciousness and don't make they're not the permanent final step. They're just part of a flow of actually getting better about these things as far as I'm concerned. And so we were talking about violence, and that's really a bottom line. And then when you're talking about that, it's the data. What's more dangerous? It doesn't matter. I had people tell me before that what people are scared of counts as more important. People are scared of the terrorists. That makes it more important than things they're actually dying from every day. How many people do you think die because we don't get cleaner energies with technologies we've had in the last 20 years? Again, Center for Disease Control and organizations like this and scientific studies compile data like that, and not just from one study, but from whole rafts of studies, and vetted a million ways, and totally, for in reality, transparent, not like Trump, supposedly transparent because he's, it's like if you're willing to let yourself look bad and like a jerk, then people go, well, he must be honest, right? Most of us try to hide that, but no, it's not how it works. But the scientific data that you can find about what causes the most deaths, what kind of crime is more dangerous, whether it's more dangerous to walk at night in the, on the border, or to walk at night around the lake in the city. You could look that up, which is actually more down. You might be more scared to be out there just across into Mexico, walking, among the shrubs. That might be more scary. It's actually more dangerous to take a walk around the lake in the city. And notice how I didn't say which city, because any lake, any city. If the lake's in a city, you're saying the extreme left is becoming the way the extreme right was in the 80s, except for they actually did have control of everything and all the businesses and the war machine. So I just think you're making false equivalencies, and yes, there's people that are censorship happy. So we fight censorship. The censorship. We fight censorship. We don't say, hey, let's assume that one ideology is against censorship, that the media is the problem, and I now know that they're the problem. No, they're not the problem, actually, if you really think about it, because people ought to be able to find better sources of data. It's not the hamburger's fault that people want to eat a hamburger, in other words. Now, they're despicable in the way they're profiting off of it, just in the same way that a fast food chain or a cigarette producer that puts something addictive into their stuff, they're abominable for the way they're interacting with that. But ultimately, it's not the problem of a newspaper to be biased. Their readership and whatnot is going to have to hold them to being factual and whatnot. And you're not really showing a lot of finding those facts that vets other things. You could keep these media, the smarter the reader is, the more the media is kept honest in the first place. Right. And so you just, I don't see cramming dogma down people's throats. There's a group of people that you're in touch with somehow that wants you to memorize 50 new types of gender, or else you're in trouble. Well, that's fucking ridiculous, and I suggest that those people are not going to get very far. They might convince you. They might convince a whole hundreds of people, but I refuse to be forced to admit that's a significant development, because things like that have always been going on, and there were people doing things like that about subjects like that even back in the 80s and 70s when they first thought them up, and all kinds of extreme versions of the philosophies that are being produced that become popular. And none of that should distract you from judging the ideas on their own. Now, you've said that it's just about the media as your red pill. I mean, but it isn't. It's also down in here. You talk about Trump isn't so bad. These things don't really count, or whatever. And making assumptions of things that people believe that are narratives, but there's alternate narratives, and there's looking and studying all the narratives, and there's coming up with your own narrative. And part of the narrative you're selling on the red pill thing is how because I admit it, these terms, people have overreacted to Trump. But on the other hand, I think it needs to be an overreaction, because maybe it isn't an overreaction, because it's like that vaccine thing. You need to react. Somebody looks fascist shape and he's president, then, you should react with preparation, right? And that's why presidents should be careful not to look that way. That's why most presidents try not to appear that way, even if they're secretly warmongers or whatever. They try not to appear these ways precisely because if you appear this way, then you're going to have to answer for it if you're the president of the United States. So he says he's at 2904 and he's talking about the kids being bad for wearing MAGA hats. They're high school kids. Well, I know that. I was once a high school kid. Unfortunately, when I was in high school, I didn't like these kind of kids either. Really a lot. And from these kinds of schools where a whole group of them would be so conformist and all know their little school songs. If they're intimidating and are assholes for wearing those hats, why don't you think people wearing gang attire and using gang symbols and hypermasculine posturing are assholes? Well, because all of that's subjective. Gang attire. Seriously? Using gang symbols. Do you really know the gang symbols? None of that. Now, hypermasculine posturing, I don't know what you mean. It goes up and bumps you with this shoulder, then those are assholes because of what he did. And I acknowledged in this video you're replying to because you say, or that people shouldn't be nervous around them. I said, of course you could be nervous around them. I just said the emphasis of that is really mostly usually mistaken, and most of those groups of people hanging out are just hanging out and don't want any trouble. And certainly the problem is that when you say people like that, they have a problem, is that you're including a lot of people that are not a problem when that should show you that you need a different litmus test, like their actual behavior, like actual suspicious behavior other than having an attire. Or using hand signals. Peace, man. Do you see he's using that communist signal? See, I've seen all of the same stuff used against the hippies, and it missed the mark. Does it mean hippies are saints, or hippies aren't dangerous, or hippies aren't this or that? No. Did it mean that some straight guy in the 60s that thought some hippie guy that was now going out with his daughter was going to run off with her, to California and live on the beach? No, that he probably was going to do that if he could get away with it, but it's like, then every person that had long hair? No, because they all did. That's how fashion works. Okay. And there's something to be said for why does like gang fashion make its way into things, but often the gang fashion is just from popular music or something, and it goes through and the cycle and is associated in certain ways with certain people, but it's inevitable that all the kids or all a group of people, that different kinds are going to choose any given attire or slang or way of slouching or not slouching or walking and whatnot. And until somebody's actually getting in your face or glaring at you and stuff, and then it doesn't matter what they're wearing, right? It doesn't matter. A straight-looking, innocent old bespectacled, looks like he should be a professor in a college guy is standing at the 7-Eleven and he's glaring at people that walk by. Yeah, I'd be concerned. I'd probably say something about that. See, so I didn't need his clothes because that's not the actual indicator. And the only way of saying it is the indicator is to include a lot of people that, it doesn't indicate and say, hey, well, you should wear that because to me it indicates, so don't wear, and it's kind of like what the gangs was saying in LA. It's like, don't wear blue in our neighborhood. I didn't know that meant anything. And that's kind of fucked up. And it's fucked up on purpose in their case, right? You're not doing it on purpose because I acknowledge, okay, there's an issue. You have to figure out how to notice when there's gang trouble brewing at the grocery store. I'm telling you, it's not by attire. By attire, you just be worried all the time. I lived in Oakland for like 6 years, by the way. And yes, we can look into each story. Yeah, to find out. Yeah, you've been finding that some of the mainstream sources for news tend to put out a lot of crap. Yeah, I just don't trust them much anymore. Okay, welcome to the club. I've never trusted them. Never. not since I was a little kid. But maybe I'm just barely older enough to remember all the hippies saying you couldn't trust the mainstream, and that it was lying to you, and you gotta tune in and drop out, and which is kind of a red pill kind of a metaphor, right? And you're not supposed to trust them, even the ones I really like. Like in a way, I could just casually say, yeah, I trust democracy now. Obviously, I'm in love with Amy Goodman. I have been for decades. She's wonderful. I met her when she came to Maine up here. Was talking to her, which by the way, I misspoke in my thing. I haven't been listening to Democracy Now since the 80s because it didn't start in the 80s, but Amy Goodman anchor on was the anchor on Pacifica Radio, which she explained to me when I had her sign my book, or her book, that I now own. Yeah, I just love her. Um, and so, normally I'd say I trust them pretty good, but no, you still have to double check. And what I like is they seem to double check, and they'll change the thing of a story, or they'll say the evidence on the other side. They'll give the data that someone could use to disagree with, what the War and Peace report thinks, whether it's war or peace, right? So technically, it's not really trust because there's still a verify. And if I read something in one place and tell someone else about it, I'll go, I just read that in one place. I don't know. It's probably bullshit or whatever. Interesting, because sometimes it's interesting, I mean, just a relative or something. I read this thing, maybe they'll know something about it. And generally, if I saw something on Democracy Now, I would still say, hey, I saw on Democracy Now, da 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 da. I might not go, it's bullshit because it's Democracy Now. You judge for yourself. I'm indicating it's from a particular source. Right? And by the time I start saying thorium is worthwhile, it's not because I saw one nova, right? It's because I've researched something and the people, but mostly the facts about that thing, and I could make a mistake and get the wrong facts still, but it's certainly not like I have to trust one source, right? And if you have a bunch of sources saying something, yeah, well, you have to look out the opposition. But I would say, you could get more quality opposition too. You don't have to go to Alex Jones. That's not opposition. That's just craziness. I mean, you could go to a somewhat, well, used to be considered conservative magazine, and The Economist, see what it's saying. You can go to Christian Science Monitor. You could go to even the National Review and stuff, and get some facts thrown from the other side, and some journalism where they admit the other side's facts, and give you enough information, and they either do or don't give you enough information to look up. If you could go through there like it's a word problem or from school or something, and you could see what did they say that's checkable, what is even possible that you say something, how would you even know? How would you even know that number? But you don't stop there and make a video. Well, not that you do this, but I mean, people shouldn't stop there and make a video about how would you know? I have raised doubt. Therefore, how you would know is there's statistics, and you go check and see, hey, is there any statistics like this? And you'll find out, is this one study? Is this 50 years of studies that have been showing this? Like I remember, I don't know, it's quite a while ago now, but not that long, like 10 years maybe, that I came to realize that the population explosion overgrowth thing that everybody, well, and all the hippies especially, were so worried about in the 70s, that wasn't happening. Basically, that all this UN action and Peace Corps stuff to educate people and give them clean water, and also some of the industrialization probably of their cities helped with getting medical science and stuff in. And lo and behold, hey, if you educate, we now know statistically through decades of statistics, not just one source, but the whole triangulation of decades of the work and the statistics on it, that, if you educate women, they have fewer children. If the children live longer, if there's less child and infant mortality, people have less children. I think it'd be the other way, right? Like you had a child die, why have another one? Just, and then you had another one. Now you're going to try another one. Yeah, that's just, who knows? Empirically, people whose children are in danger from, the natural dangers of, in the state of nature out in the wild. Until a kid, like the Hawaiians used to have a thing, is they have a big party when the kid turns 1, and allegedly it's because, you know, then he's home free if he can make it that long, because they don't all make it that long. And when you improve that with modern knowledge and also, technology like clean water systems, lo and behold, people have less kids. So, it's a known fact. So, anyway, that was just something that, I forget how it occurred to me, and I'm like, really? And, I went and researched it, and then sure enough, and that's the Gapminder is a part of that. I found Hans Rosling, whose whole thing was about, hey, stuff is actually getting a lot better than you realize. Everybody in the world has more of a life expectancy than anybody, than any nation did, 100 years ago or 150 years ago. So, and furthermore, you can see how different countries perform on things like child mortality and whatnot, and average income and things, and see how some countries have deviated from what the whole group was doing, and you could go and find out what policies they had that made that deviation. So simple. We're waiting for the perfect meme to tell us what the solution is. It's like, hey, I really like your solution, but I think you're going to need to make a meme out of it. You said CNN used to be a good source before they had competition in 1996. I don't think so. I think they've always been crap. They were certainly big war. They profited from us having the wars. They've been big trumpets of the wars in all those years since then. And Ted Turner's supposedly liberal. I'm not buying it. Or he's liberal, and doesn't really matter. Doesn't mean you're not an asshole. Doesn't mean you're not a manipulative. And he funded Turner Broadcasting off of junk bonds and big corrupt business. Just one of the big rapes that have happened to the American people from in the name of getting rich. So I never really liked it. It's like right now it's annoying me a lot these days, but in a way it's at its peak as, well, at this point, maybe we need status quo people. But, status quo on American media, the tradition means that it's still going to be pro-war and, lying about socialist ideas. Though that's kind of changed. I noticed kind of weird. One thing, even on Fox News, usually over all of my life, if somebody was coming around saying tax people at 70% over $10 million, it'd be reported as, and a lot of Republicans do just put it this way, a 70% tax, like everybody's going to get it. And they were actually mentioning over $10 million part. So that was weird. That was a rhetorical backpedaling a little bit from right there. It slipped up. Maybe they know they can only lie so much. People are getting more aware about what these, what the real story is about something, and not the right opinion to have. See, that's the other thing. It's not like anybody should be looking for the right opinion to have. Like no, you need the facts and to form your own opinion. And of course, the writer is a human being. They do have an opinion. They can't help but put their opinion in their piece, and they're supposed to put it in there. So if they're real, that's why there's an art to it, because you're supposed to do that and then also say, here's, all the facts, including here's the facts that make me, maybe the guy was innocent, even though to me he looked guilty, or whatever the guy has his opinion about. Quotas change the eventual stats, but I'm strongly against using them as a method. I'm dead set against them. I would never want to get a job or housing based on my sexuality. Yeah, I don't see it. I guess I know what you're talking about. See, to me, the way I look at it is that wouldn't be why you were getting your housing per se. It would be why the racists weren't allowed to stop you from getting your housing. Um, I would hope we wouldn't need quotas. I mean, my answer to not needing the quota kind of thing is, as a nation, you have to make sure like there's enough places for everybody to stay, and even the homeless just have some place they can go and stay with the roof over their head. And once you do things like that, once you make sure everybody can have a first-time house loan for people that want houses, and cheap, reliable, steady, price on the rent that they can rely on, and don't need to be getting a bigger and bigger and bigger job, because Facebook moved in down the street. And if you had that kind of ability to get what you need, then you don't have to tell people, oh, have a certain percentage of this, right? The problem, oh, dang. So the problem is the racists, not the fact that there's no perfect tool. Like chemotherapy sucks. It's better if we could have a better cure for cancer, treatment for cancer than chemotherapy or radiation therapy. But it's not radiation therapy's fault. It's the cancer's fault. But yeah, we could use alternates. Come up with alternates. That's what this medium's supposed to be for. Let's have some big idea alternates. For me, I don't have a big motivation because I think it can be just fine for now, the way it is. My only alternate is that it should be economic. It could be economic, is what affirmative action could be on, as well. Some sort of, let's phase into economic ones, because there was certainly a time you needed affirmative action even for rich people. Some rich kid who could pay and went to Yale, but he happened to be African American and couldn't get a job at the New York law firm. He needed affirmative action to be able to get in there, right? That's how that happened. And no, maybe that part's already over. Maybe if you're rich and African American and can be well educated and all of the rest of it, maybe you have a chance. Maybe it should just go down, and the poor white people should get some kind of. Well, see, it's affirmative action. It's not really at that. It's like if you just make sure there's a safety net of available resources to survive, medicine, a roof, and people can go educate, then you can go ahead and release stuff just to this what you call the total, uh, free power. But we know market power doesn't solve racism. So in the meanwhile, uh, if done with care, it works fine enough for me. So you come up with a good idea alternative to quotas, and refer to actual quotas that are used now, and we'll talk about the numbers. Like how many people got an extra chance because of the quota, versus how many people actually go to the school and stuff. And then we could judge an idea like that. Okay, this is where you're saying there's a big push for people to memorize those names. And I'm just saying, just some people are feeling that big push. Most people, I assure you, haven't even heard that it's a thing going on. Okay. And you say, and they call people and bigots. Yeah, well, there's people that will try to push things like that, I mean, what are you going to do? If people get into something like veganism and then they are, again, not everybody in the group will be an asshole, but every group will have some assholes, and those assholes, certain kinds of assholes especially, they're going to want to use that group feeling. This is why I don't really like groups. I don't like the warm, cuddly, fuzzy of a group and oh, you belong. Because to me, this is how groups actually are, and they're always containing, some sort of a policing structure. And the groups don't kick those people out. Quite the opposite. Those people do get a valued role in the group. Like they keep people pure or something. They make the people that stay in the group like, I'm okay because look, Mr. White Blood Cell over there, he's checked me out. And it's just bullshit. So, I prefer mixed groups. A family's actually good for that, in that if you have like kind of family I'm from. There's all different kinds of people, different political positions and things like that. So it becomes like almost a cross section of the culture. But you know, groups that are just cross sections of the culture, um, I far more prefer. And then working in political campaigns and whatnot, you find people that want to get such stuff done, and they don't spend so much time deciding who to kick out, because if they kick you out, then they're going to have to fold 20,000 extra envelopes, letters, and stuff them in envelopes, right? So when people actually getting work done together, people can't just say you're not my friend anymore, you know. Um, so I'd not heard this about their official government meetings where they ban the use of male or female. Everyone is they now. I've used the neutral they for years and argued for it as well. When back people would be like, "What are you doing? It's supposed to be he in this case." I'm like, "They. We already have a neutral pronoun. No, technically it's not. No, technically it is. People understand it as an accidentally use it as a neutral singular pronoun. So I guess it is that. So that's good news." I was talking to these guys. I play this open source video game, Sauerbraten, with people from all over the world, and it hadn't occurred to me till a little while ago, but it might have been a year or two. I think it was in the last year. Um, and I was talking to them about, we think having in, we're in, having problems because of, you know, gender semantic wars or something. Imagine the gendered languages, and they were telling me some of the things. Um, Much more difficult there, you know, where everything's gendered, and a lot of the gendering is weird, you know, is weird, historically weird from the time of weirdness, known as the not necessarily that distant past, and the present for that. We're still in the past as far as I'm concerned. Um, Trump isn't tying the government to corporations. He's removing the government from no. He's removing the government from corporations by removing regulations. Well, first of all, no, because he didn't give up his corporation. He's having diplomats stay in his businesses. He's taking the whole team of Secret Services and people to his own Mar-a-Lago. His business is becoming the government. He's calling Mar-a-Lago the Winter White House. He's blurring the line between his corporation, which is supposed to be separate and stuff, but there's tons of evidence it has not been separate at all. It was negotiating the Trump Tower throughout the whole campaign, even when people were asking, he was saying, "I don't even know Russia. What's a Russia?" He's bragging about calling up people. I called up Ford and I said, "Hey, you got to keep that plant here." So they did. Just took 5 minutes. That's And you say no regulations, right? No regulations, except for when I call you, better fucking answer. Regulations, yeah, and that's fascist. That's a fascist kind of link to the government, and the only reason it's not super worrying, just as worrying as everybody that's freaking out thinks, is because Trump is probably kind of an incompetent version uh, of a person with too small of an actual organization of his own that isn't old enough to really pull off, um, you know, some major overtake in the way the United States is run. Um, that's why, you know, I think either he'll be forced to give in and resign and make an excuse, or he might be going to jail. I don't think he's going to be able to. I don't think he's going to be able to just favor his own little corporations. They're not big enough. There's not a big enough network of people in the take of the Trump, you know, method or whatever. Which is, you know, again, fortunate, but I'm hardly going to say, well, that's a good thing. He deserves praise for declaring with words that mainstream media is garbage isn't fascism. Uh, well, I think when you're the president, right? The president's different than just being a person. I mean, and the distinction might be that when you're a president, you know, thinking you could still trash the media, and it's not just the mainstream media. He's talking about all of it, anybody. I mean, is the Guardian mainstream media? Well, it kind of is, except for it's still run by as a not profit off of an endowment and donations. So, not exactly mainstream. It's sort of. I hope it is mainstream. Good for them. They used to be the rebel newspaper, and now uh, they certainly don't deserve. I mean, they deserve the respect of a legitimate media organization, and even shitty papers do. And he's talking about how mainstream media is garbage, but not the National Enquirer, not Alex Jones. Didn't he go on Alex Jones? He's been on Alex Jones before, I think. That's good. So yeah, he's calling out. I mean, everybody knows that the media, you know, has these problems, and I don't know why they don't know how to, you know, get better information in the internet age. But hopefully, they're slowly learning. And attacking the press from the seat of power is a sign of fascism. And the reason it's different is because those people have the ability, and sometimes do, often do, um, kill and oppress and arrest and say, you know, call, you know, someone like Glenn Greenwald be called a terrorist. And yeah, that's definitely part of the fascist archetype. And you said if he was actually doing more than speaking words about it, I'd agree with you. Well, he has done more. He's kicked people out uh, of the White House press room. They're not having any. You might not have noticed, but they haven't been having the daily briefing. They don't publish that anymore. And Ms. Sanders says she, you know, is answering the questions though, but just on a private basis. And uh, they're trying to, through the Inquirer, Trump is, you know, blackmailing the owner of another newspaper to publish, you know, sort of retractions, or else his dick pics are going to be published. So it is. He's made clear that he never intends to do anything about it. Well, then shut up about it. Then he could shut up about it. If he's going to keep talking about it, uh, I'm taking him seriously that that's the kind of person he is. But he'll never do it. Okay, yeah, he talks about punching you in the face, but he'll never do it. But that is the kind of person that he is. Saying there are good people on both sides of something is not fascism. See, that's a really unfortunate and improper way to put that. Saying there are good people on both sides of something is not fascism. Right. Like there are good people on both sides of something. Like say that something is the US-Mexico border. Not fascism. Right? But if you're saying that there's good people on both sides of something and the something is a fascist rally, see, then that's different. And that's what I was talking about. You certainly didn't say that their beliefs are good on either side. I don't know what you mean by that. They're good people. So when you are saying, hey, don't forget, there's good people on the Jews will not replace us side too, that, you know, and also another thing is the whole thing of people should punch him in the face. I'll defend you if you punch them in the face at his rallies. That's also very fascist. This is part of Trump's trolling behavior. Trolling isn't fascism. Um, if you use the fascist archetype in your trolling, then it's fascism because of that. That it's trolling has nothing to do with it. And also, yeah, great. one of the ways to deal with trolls is, if trolls think you're supposed to keep your cool and not talk to them, no, you're not just allowed to be. I could talk to you if I want. I can lance. You're a boil. I could lance if I want. I'll decide. And if you're trolling just to make me pissed off, um, the whole idea of, well, you shouldn't get pissed off. That's because being pissed off can make you irrational and you make bad decisions. But if you're just careful to make careful decisions, you focus the anger that you have that this asshole is trying to piss you off. Right? Like in the old days when someone said your mom wears army boots, it wasn't that the guy who heard it really thought that that guy thought his mom wore army boots. The whole exchange of that kind of an insult is just, I want to make you mad. I'm using fighting words. I'm not going to make up ones that make you so angry you realize they're fighting words. No, I'm just going to say, I'll make you mad. Because you've made me mad already, probably. So, if he wants to troll and make everybody mad, he deserves all the heat for that. I don't believe that, he's just trolling, so he doesn't deserve any heat for that hateful bullshit. No, he deserves 20 times more. A person that isn't trolling and says those things from their free speech and their heartfelt thing, then that would be, okay, everybody calm down. We should be able to have a conversation. Where you're just a troll, you're just lying just to piss people off. It doesn't matter what's true. Yeah, fuck that to the nth more degree. Doesn't make it better. And when somebody's getting run over and at a right-wing rally where they're chanting Nazi bullshit and having Nazi stuff there, and your idea is, well, there's good people on both sides, that is, you are praising fascism. That's specifically what that is. And you could go, but there was. Yeah, there were good people among the actual Nazis. There were good people that actually put on the uniforms, right? They didn't all go run death camps and whatnot. But according to historical reports, even some of those people, because of the kind of mindfuck, they're living their lives as nice people. They're not robbing and raping and stuff other than killing and murdering a bunch of people because somehow that made sense. There were tons more of the Nazis that just were doing their jobs, doing other things, figuring whatever, concentration camps is fake news. And they're culpable, and the Germans evidently felt a great deal of guilt because of that kind of culpability. But they were nice people. But if you said, hey, the Nazis are terrible and they're killing all the Jews, and somebody's like, yeah, but, there's also nice people over there. There's nice people in every group. I said there's nice people in that gang group, and you, later in this message, are going to call me some sort of a name or something. I forget what it was because, get real. So I'm saying, hey, there's a group of kids there that look a little tough. Probably most of them are nice people. No, you don't understand that. But a bunch of Nazis, probably. I know some people. I know some conservatives. I have a conservative relative that was there, right? So that's not the both sides we're talking about. The other side we're talking about, besides the decent side, is a couple hundred guys chanting the Jews will not replace us and all that bullshit they did, and beating up people and killing a woman and injuring a bunch of people by driving a car into him. And to this day, right now, they're still saying, he was maybe being chased by a gun. They were attacking him. He wasn't him. She was fat, so she just had a heart attack. Still saying that. You say Trump has clamped down on this stuff more than Obama. Not much. Obama was terrible about the border as far as I'm concerned. But trying to clamp down on illegal immigration is not a fascist move. No, it isn't necessarily a fascist move at all. I said be an anti-immigrant. I don't care what the adjective you're going to throw in front of immigrant. I said anti-immigrant. You switched it over to illegal immigrant. And I'm saying I don't care what the adjective is in front of it. Anti-immigrant, thinking about immigrants of any sort is a right-wing thing. It's a right-wing fascist kind of an attitude, and they can be on the left. And unions are traditionally like, we don't want them to cut down on, but it's not like they go around being anti-immigrant. There might be some sort of a, like if you had a migrant labor deal, they'd be against it. But again, it's not like they go anti-immigrant keeps us together, but build that wall. So it does do that. Okay. Okay, you agree with me that we should be retracting our military, um, like from Europe and the world. Yes, I do. But we should leave organizations in place, and we should definitely not trash NATO. Even though I've always, NATO is I'm mostly, I would consider myself a not a pacifist, but a peace activist. And there's very few wars that I thought, were supportable, and the ones I did think were supportable turned out fucked too, like Afghanistan. Um, so we don't want to, even though that's the case, and NATO's been involved with that. It's also been a force of stability. We didn't have another war in Europe. It's a good thing. It's a good uh, thing that we have such tight trust, where we trust each other with even military stuff. Enemies could not share, and as we take away some of the military dependency of our role, um, we should replace that with other institutions. We should replace that with joint approaches to how we should deal with refugees, for example. Um, I went back to that one. You say even saying something like it kind of resembles fascism is hyperbole as well. Yeah, we do have to disagree. We're going to end up disagreeing on most of this stuff. There could be no delusions that the point of this is that we end up agreeing on everything. We're going to find out what we agree on, what we disagree on, right? We're going to make arguments because also it's a public conversation, and and so people in the comments are going to make arguments. There's going to be arguments about what things mean, and even what we do or don't agree on and stuff. But yeah, you definitely, yes, fascism is a real thing. It's in recent history. It did not go away. There are patterns where you can resemble it, just like kind of resembling, a gang member. Okay. Now, when I kind of see a movement that kind of resembles fascism, that gives me the concern that you feel when you kind of see a group of kids who kind of might be in a gang, or maybe not, right? I'm not concerned about that gang in the same way that I'm concerned about a widespread fascist movement, just based on historical facts. Until that gang gets brought up into some violent control of some territory, like drug lords becoming, the de facto leader of whole territories, those guys are not usually that much trouble compared to um, what happens when the fascists take over. And we have a lot of examples of what happens when fascists take over because of America helped those fascists, like Pinochet, like that gang down there in Indonesia. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about there. You agree Trump is a symptom? 50 minutes in and I'm confused. Okay, I don't remember exactly what I said, but why are the white supremacists having to be fought with a gun and kept under control? Do you know what put them in the limelight? Antifa. I disagree with that. I don't remember why I would say what I said that, specifically along these lines, but um, I think violent white supremacists are more dangerous. That's why. And I don't think that they were put in the limelight by Antifa. I think they were put in the limelight by Trump, a candidate that David Duke and all these white supremacists somehow found it in their heart to trust and want. And that is what emboldened them. And Antifa is a reaction to them. It went the other way around. That's what I believe. And the Black Lives Matter came, before Trump as a result of the fact that after these 20 years or decades of getting videotape and stuff, it's become pretty clear. We all get the stories more quick. People deny the statistics, but again, they're quite knowable. And, there's a real problem there. And that movement, I don't buy uh, as primarily a violent movement. Antifa, I think there's a lot of people in it that don't want it to be a violent movement. But there's a lot of people that are violent, and there's a lot of sympathy to the idea that, well, these are fascists. You have to fight fascists. If the fascists take control, they're going to be violent. That is absolutely a part of their philosophy, that they will be brutally violent, to the innocent, to people, eugenics reasons, for all kinds of reasons. And so, as far as I'm concerned, they provoke that situation where violence is on the table. And it's also a problem with letting them be platformed, because that's fine, but if it goes too far and then you're the scary fascist movement, then we're going to have to do something about it. And if you start a civil war or try to take over, we're going to have to, it's just like there's certain times you're going to have to defend yourself. If a foreign country invaded your own country, you would have to take up arms and fight them. So you would definitely want to prevent that. You wouldn't want that other country to think that they could come do that for sure. You'd want them to know that's like, I'm going to have to shoot you guys if you try to come in and just come down and make this a part of your country, right? Right. And so people know that pretty well. Well, it's the same with Nazis. If they try to come over and take over the country, no deal. Oh, but this and that. Well, first of all, you're wrong. Not you, Kizzume, but they're wrong about all these arguments about how they think of everything, and the Constitution, which they don't really read and whatnot. And they're just wrong. We don't have to let them take over the country, and we're not going to. And it doesn't matter really what a document says. We can't let fascists run things anymore. And they certainly do still run plenty of things, um, as far as I'm concerned. And say, oh, but you shouldn't call them fascists. Well, I'm not calling them Nazis. That's a particular fascist party. But fascism is a pattern of political attitudes and behavior as well. It's this right-wing authoritarian bullshit way that, frankly, a lot of companies like, third world countries to be run that way, so that, you want to talk about socialists that are actually fascist. Yeah, there's some out there for you to find. And, and you can absolutely tell. And even authoritarian socialist regimes that actually are socialist in some sense, I would say that they're definitely corrupt, because they're obviously not doing things for the wealth of the people, and they're really an oligarchy. But they also do have a different pattern of behavior um, from Nazis. Like, like Stalin, very much like Nazi, I would say. At different stages of the socialism in Russia, you could see different aspects of how much they were like a Nazi or more like a left-wing authoritarian. But like in Cuba, you had a more left-wing authoritarian, and you could see it in the fact that there's like good health care and things like that, and because, it's not all authoritarianism is fascist, but it's all bad. But I think we are not likely to have an authoritarian left government in this country, certainly in my lifetime. And it's like, oh, but we don't want to get close. Yeah, we're too close to the right-wing ones for my taste. So yeah, I want to veer to this other side. We'll take our risks over there as far as I'm concerned. Well, you said for decades we've had white nationalists having their little marches, but Charlottesville was significant because it was post-Trump. It was big. You had a lot of the big fascist names and KKK type names involved. You had a bunch of the YouTube red pilled set showing up and getting down, and and somebody killed somebody. So that it's like people ignored them and they essentially went away. Well, the thing is, the ACLU helped them get that permit for that march. And afterwards, I don't know if they've changed their mind since, but afterwards they're like, well, we're not going to do that anymore. This tradition of helping, Nazis get their time in the street, we're not going to do that because people are going to get killed. And I think a lot of people that are kind of like already don't like fascists, or for that matter, just want an enemy, a villain to hate, kind of thought, well, yeah, these guys, this is a problem. We can't just let them keep marching around killing the counter protesters. How many until we take it serious? You say he's honest about his intentions on what he wants to implement, and I'm telling you, no, he is not. And you have seen enough things to know he is not honest about his intentions or what he wants to implement. That is not true. He said his intention was to get Mexico to pay for it. He's having us pay for it. He says many, many, many things that show that his intentions were not as he said. So I don't know why you would say that, because when did he say he wanted to destroy the environment? When did he say he wanted to destroy the environment so that corporations could do whatever they want? Oh, he said he wanted to reduce regulations. Right, because there's phrases of stuff that sound good to people like you, for example, that think that means, oh, he's getting government out of our business. But it wasn't really doing that. It's doing the opposite, and it's promoting certain businesses and promoting certain things that he has not been honest about the true intention, especially since the true intention is, for him to make money off of it, and he has. He's made a lot of money. You agreed with me that he lies about statistics. 555. So how far? Jeez. Okay, there's a lot of notes at the end. Yeah, so we're way more than halfway through, but not about halfway to the notes. I had said those people in the group are also individuals. So, for example, those kids standing by the 7-Eleven and you facepalm, ugh, you still seem to be ignoring what I'm saying. I get what you're saying. Maybe you're ignoring what I'm saying. I get what you're saying. I think I explained it really well in that last video, right? Is that, yeah, it's dangerous. There's real fears and stuff like that. But also you can go. It depends. Okay, holy shit, you're actually going there. So you'd walk up to people doing hypermasculine posturing, wearing gang attire. Okay, hypermasculine posturing, to me, you're talking about like standing around. Right? Because if somebody's glaring at you, I've already made clear. No, that's aggressive to you in particular. But someone trying to hang around, look like I'm super masculine, it's like, it's hormones, baby. That's pretty inevitable. And if they asked, who the hell do you think you are? And you'd say, hi, I'm Pyrrho. How are you? Well, no, if somebody said, who the hell do you think you are when I walked up to them? Like maybe I'm going to ask for a cigarette. Hey, you got a light? See, you're smoking a cigarette. You got a light? And as I'm going up, they're like, who the hell do you think you are? I'm the guy who's going to ask for a light. Anybody got a light? You'd be surprised what would happen even in that situation. But obviously, if he goes, who the hell do you think you are? There's some aggression being actually shown to you, right? If when you're walking by the group, they're all screaming at you, or catcalling you, and you're a woman, yeah, that's threatening. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, you're tall there, huh? What's your face that shape for? That kind of stuff, that's threatening. I wouldn't go up and go, hi, I guess we could be best friends. On the other hand, if you're at the park and you're playing frisbee and there's a group of guys, they're just hanging out on the edge of the park, just kind of doing that posturing, young boy mostly thing, or sometimes it's a mixed group. Yeah, I would interact with them. I would talk. I would specifically, especially if I was nervous about them, I would then, in that situation, it's like, well, we need to have a calm situation here at the park for me, and I would definitely talk. And that is usually shown that you check them out, and people are just like, yeah, we're just hanging out. What are you doing, homie? Or whatever. And that's my experience. But then again, the longest I lived in the biggest city I lived in was Oakland, and people are really nice in Oakland, mostly. You say I'm being ridiculous, unbelievable. Well, I think you're unbelievable to say that. I mean, just think about it. You're saying, hey, think about the other side. I'm saying the same thing. And I am thinking about these examples you say. I admit certain aspects of it and then explain why I don't see it in the end from the emphasis from your direction. But you're talking about, hey, you could perfectly see how, of course, I should spend time thinking about all the nice guys that are on the Nazi side of the Nazi rally. You know, that are there by accident, that don't know what's going on, that don't really believe it, but they just got some friends that were going. That's easy for you to think. But then that group that you were talking about, and I'm saying, well, in there's perfectly nice people. You like can't believe it. You want to switch that around on me. The difference is we're talking about people not wearing a uniform from an organization that is a Nazi. We're talking about kids with fashion that might look threatening to somebody that's not from their social understanding group of what their fashion is anymore. Or not anymore, but currently, because it's always changing. You said, yes, sorry, but you're trying to find a way out of that. Okay, wait, nice. Most of the people I see doing this are in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s. They're not teenagers. I'm 50. They're all teenagers to me. It's not as much about the way they dress as about the way they carry themselves, their attitudes. To me, same thing. You know, you don't read their minds or whatever. If somebody's leaning back against the light pole, I guess it's the 1950s, and they're trying to be tough. It's just that most of the time, those ways of being happen to usually be wearing, yeah, those ways of being happen to usually be wearing certain styles. Okay, yeah, I thought I misread that, but it's just like most of the people that are being that way basically also are wearing a certain style, according to you. I don't find that to be the case. I find, and there's certainly people that think it's a 50-year-old white man that carry bad attitude, wear stupid clothes that make them look like assholes. When people, and I'm not saying you're saying what I just said. I just said what I just said as a thought about what you're saying. Okay, so it's a reaction. I'm not attributing to you exactly the thought that I just said. It's just like that's what it makes me think. It's like no, when people are okay, you say when people are acting like thugs, they're going to be looked at that way. Yeah, acting like, not just dressed like with the alleged attitude of, but actually acting like a thug, like hitting someone, stealing something, being a criminal. And it would be stupid to just go up and say, "Hi, everyone. My name is Teddy Ruxpin. Can you and I be friends?" Right, but that's not what we're talking. I'm not saying and I'm going to go up into the middle of somebody that is, say, beating up another person and be like, "Hey, everybody. My name is Teddy Ruxpin. Can we be friends?" No. At that point, you go up with the gun or the police, or you say, "Shit, I can't handle this situation. I'm going to run and call the police." You definitely should do something to help that person getting beat up, to help stop that violence. So if there was actual thuggishness going on, I'm not saying that. But if there's no thuggishness and it's just styles and hanging out, I would find out what's going on. What are these people? I wouldn't assume I knew their attitude mindset. I'd say a few things to them. For example, do you have a light for the cigarette? You can tell a lot. The funniest thing is almost everybody, even assholes and criminals, will be like, "Fuck, sure, bro." I've asked for lighters from definitely some trippy ass people that um, they were a little sketchy, and they're still like, "Okay." But then again, you'd be surprised. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's like, "Okay, I guess we are friends. I gave you something." You know that's true, right? I don't know if you ever know this. This took me forever to figure out. It's just not the way I think. But people actually like you more when they've done something for you than when you've done something for them. If they've loaned you a lighter, they're gonna like you, uh, like be invested a little more in liking you and giving you a chance, and liking you, than from the other way around. Really weird phenomenon. Pretty sure there's been some research on that. Um, Oh, okay. I had to read a little bit because you leave the time mark, which I'm not playing, and it says so. So I wasn't sure what the context was. As I've said, there's no heads to the left wing version of this, meaning heads. Like it's not the uh, majority. I said that the other day. The moral majority. There doesn't have to be a leader for there to be a movement. The left doesn't do leader worship like the right does. I don't know. In a way, I want to agree, but I don't know. I just think it seems different the way they do it, but there's a lot of this adulation on the left. But it's still a movement, and the movement needs to be named. If it isn't given a name, people will just say the left instead. Do you like that? I don't like that. I don't like being associated with that stuff, so I'd rather have it have a name. I agree with you, and it should have a name. But when you name it, you can't just assume like, and you can't do things like, look at these Black Lives Matter people doing something, and then think that that reflects everybody. You just named all the people. You might have to name that this is the radical Black Lives Matter, or you might find it's not Black Lives Matter, but it's somebody else. I mean, when we used to protest trying to protect People's Park in Berkeley, you know, around, around sundown, a bunch of these anarchist, violent anarchist type kids would come in and start the riot. They wanted to come in for the riot and throwing the rocks through the window of the Gap and whatnot. And they used to say after a protest at Berkeley, all of these students would be coming with brand new Gap clothes. But they come in and then the news is like, oh, look at these people trying to save People's Park. Sure they are. Look, they're actually violent. This is a different group of people. And so if you're just going to name something, you're going to have to realize that that's not good enough then to say, here's a video of of Antifa violence. That shows Antifa is blah, 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 blah. Any more than I can say, look, here's a video of this right winger driving over a person, and that makes the Republican Party wrong, right? I could say that the people at that march were right wing, and they kind of like this collective individual that was there on a particular day, individuatable, like I can identify it was this event. They are related in a way similar to groups overall, right? So, my relative that was there, he didn't kill someone, and he's not a Nazi, right? So that guy driving over those people, it does reflect on this movement and why I'm against fascism, but it doesn't mean every individual in there gets tarred with that. Now, since most of these other individuals in the part of the rally that I'm talking about, not everybody like my relative that went there that might be conservative but wasn't, no, these guys that walked with the tiki torches, their movement, it is more bad than good, you see. Black Lives Matter, I'm not sure. And even Antifa, I don't know. I've seen some peaceful people saying they're part of New York Antifa uh, around that aren't violent. And I've seen ones that aren't violent but are like, oh, but you never know because the fascists might need to be fought. And that also is like, okay, this is starting to get to be a scary situation. But fascists actually do need to be fought, so we certainly don't want to be caught unaware. So I guess we're going to have to sit on the edge of our seat for a while and worry this out. You said there's a movement and it's spreading. It doesn't have to be high on crime statistics to be a movement. This isn't about measurable statistics, so stop bringing them into this. This impact isn't easily measurable. So we could go look. That will tell us whether, no, my God, it's just like a disease. People die from disease. Okay, that's right. So, okay, yeah. I was saying that Antifa, if you want to know how big of a problem it is, you have to go see the crime statistics. There's a movement and it's spreading. It doesn't have to be high in crime statistics to be a movement. No, but to be a crisis, it would. This isn't about measurable statistics. Yes, everything is about measurable statistics. This might be the foundation of the problem of you finding a good news source, because everything, absolutely every single thing, in the whole universe that you and I are ever going to discuss is about measurable statistics. And anything you're going to observe is your measurements of your environment, what the color is. Oh, if you're colorblind, then it's going to be black and white. You're not going to have as much information. You're going to be collecting what information that you can measure successfully, and that's all. That's it. Your emotions and stuff, well, I believe you can measure those in a way. You can measure the intensity. You can measure through the reaction of how it made you act after, how you felt, whether you were, did better at work the next day or whatever. So there's ways to get into measurements about, like, whether love is good for you or not. I don't know. Did good things happen when you felt it, and the decisions you made when you had that feeling? So everything's measurable. Certainly, if we're talking about what to be worried about in terms of violent movements in our country, yeah, we should look into the statistical measures. I hope that you don't know that if you look into it, you're going to find right-wing violence tops all the rest of political hate crime and violence in the United States. So I hope that's not why you didn't want to count measurements, but I count measurements. I don't count what's getting time on people's Twitter compared to things that are happening that nobody's paying attention to, right? Like, I was following that pipeline protest. Was it in North Dakota or South North Dakota? Well, before it became this meme type thing that the Young Turks and everybody's wanting to talk about. And it wasn't like the thing itself changed, because it was good to get more eyes on it, but it's not like the what was happening was changing because of that. And similarly, if there's violence and people are dying um, from some group's activity, then it certainly matters how many. You said, I don't like Trump either. I've never liked him. Did you know that Biff Tannen was based on Trump? Yes, I did. He's always been unlikable. Yes, I've hated him. I cannot believe that this motherfucker became president. Seriously, it's like if you take the person you don't even necessarily have a good reason for hating this celebrity. It's just kind of a celebrity that just drives you nuts. And it's not even like I'm like, how dare he get rich? No, he was started off rich, so it's just like, get out of our face with this stupid greed is good, pouring champagne on Cadillacs and shit. And this glitzy motherfucker has all this money to be fancy, and he's the most tacky. I mean, it's just everything bugs me about him. But then again, it's no big deal because it's like he's just another person. And then he fucking becomes very frustrating. You say the impacts aren't measurable. Yeah. If the impact isn't measurable, for sure, it's small. I guarantee you. Big impacts, always somewhat measurable. You said, I don't like Trump either. Oh, yeah. See, I had this thing highlighted still, so my eye went back to it. I had from the comment before. Okay, and then you say, no worries. I did originally think it was a pwnage video disguised as something else, but it's all good, man. Thank you for saying that. It was not meant to be. I was a little bit off the cuff, and maybe, I mean, like, not taking it seriously enough that you actually have a serious idea that you were sharing, and you were doing it in a raw way, unedited, which you usually edit, and things like that. And I didn't take it as, oh, I should be super serious every time I put everything. And then as it went further, like off the rails from my point of view, then it was just like, well, oh my God, why even take it seriously? But so those are kind of my mistakes in that, because you know what I mean? It could have been good if we chit-chatted all the time and you knew what kind, how, if we did this more, then maybe you would have known. And it was like I was too, not jovial, what's the word? Too congenial or something about it, and which was not really as respectful as some of your points. Which is, it's a danger of the fact, because of all the disagreements I have with the points you're making. But I definitely, it would be hard for me to describe exactly like why am I subscribed to you. Because it's definitely not that I agree with people. It's not always that they always, it's someone that's thoughtful and tries to think things through in their own frame of reference. Sometimes that logical frame of reference doesn't tie together too well. Like it could be, I've watched someone that I'm subscribed to a lot of people with, kind of out there scientific theories and stuff. And I like that the consistency and to see how they get to an idea. And I think, and so that's just it in general. In like an individual case, I don't really know, except for that I do like it doesn't feel like a waste of time listening to you reply, or mostly not. I mean, just listening to you talk about things you've gone through and your stages, like you said, you share that and you're pretty clear. And then I also happen to like, that I like when I don't do this much, as if I was more conscientious to the channel, I would, because I really like, that you, I'm just trying to say go out on walks, but when you went to that one place that's from that town that's been abandoned and now there's graffiti all over the road, uh, that's the best look I ever got at that road. I watched a whole documentary on that thing and stuff, and I was like, so there's reasons like that, but mostly, whatever, it comes down to I don't want to pwn you. I do want to be able to just say whatever I feel about a thing, and that I can also hear what you say, but then again, that's could be a cop out of if it turns into, I'm rude and goofing on your stuff in a way that you don't like, and then leads to that. I do want to avoid that kind of stress for all of us. Um, Whereas, I'm probably willing to risk some of it because um, I think it's really important we get all the information on the table. And it's just nice to be as diplomatic as possible, but part of the information is people's emotional reaction to certain ideas. Like, I think I've shared pretty well that, yeah, I have an emotional reaction to the fascists. I thought torture was over. I didn't like how back in 2004 suddenly was an open question. Does America torture its enemies? I thought that was over, that question. And now it's coming back, and now it's not just as it's coming back. It's been, 15 years of it having come back, and the spy state and all this stuff. We knew they were spying and recording calls in the 70s and 80s as computers came in. They'd get better and better. And then it just breaks out, and oh my God, they have been spying us. What are we going to do about this illegal spying? President Obama, what are we going to do about all this terrible illegal spying that's been going on? We're going to make it legal. Yeah, so it's like the whole fucking system is more police statey. And frankly, I don't care if the word should be fascist or not. We'll find another word if it takes it. Because I'm really just talking in the sense that you're like using red pill your own way. To me, the fascism thing is this right wing authoritarianism where I don't care if it was really called right wing. I don't care if you even call it authoritarianism per se. But what else would you want to call it? It's a police state, though. If you could create some science fiction where there isn't authoritarianism per se, because maybe there's no authority, but there's a police state. Like, let's say the robots do the police state, and they got programmed 1,000 years ago, and nobody knows how to reprogram or whatever. The point is, it'd be this police state thing where everybody's surveilled, everybody's in, and everybody's considered dangerous, and until proven innocent, and everybody's got to keep in the row and don't look the right and make sure, and don't have the wrong look or hat or whatever, play the wrong music. Write bad poems. The police state, and to me that's the fascist thing, and I think I made a good case for how Trump is a part of all that stuff and part of the swamp and all the rest of the thing. Your last comment is CNN has both a somewhat liberal bias and a strong warmongering bias. One could even say they're part of the military-industrial complex, so to speak. I don't really see a bias there that I would call liberal. I think they have what is called the status quo. Like, what a bunch of people think at their cocktail parties is acceptable ways of talking. You could think something about this person, but you should only say this, and what is polite and what isn't polite, and how much respect should you give the president or not. They have a very status quo. They're trying to go for what they think they've calculated is already the accepted right way. This is what the A student kids do. Everybody knows this is what you do, and they probably all do other things. But if it's like A students don't do drugs, then they pretend they don't do drugs, but they probably snort cocaine after their show. And if they So um, I wouldn't call that somewhat liberal at all. We're in this weird America thing where, that's not the international standard of what's liberal and conservative, really. CNN, uh, like which liberal thing? Again, only the fact that they will say, oh, well, some identity politic thing. But when it comes to economic liberalism, oh, no. No, they're saying it's crazy. When it comes to, uh, I don't know, the kind of liberals that criticize Palestine, don't think so. I mean, Israel's treatment of Palestine, don't think so. So I'm not sure. I would say I wouldn't even want to call them centrist, but I think that's a more fair way of talking about people that try to adhere to the status quo the way they do. Um, they were pushed a little bit liberal as a means of attacking Trump, but you can see now that as the Democrats are having candidates, you can see how they're lining up. It's not like they're lining up for the most liberal of the candidates. And a strong warmongering bias. Yeah, they really do. And they actually always have. One could even say they're part of the military-industrial complex, so to speak. Yes, I believe so. I think very, very much so, actually. I think they might even be worse perpetrators of that media war cozy relationship, which it really isn't supposed war reporters not supposed to be cozy the way they are with the whole concept of it all. More cheerleaders, right, than reporters. Probably even worse than all the other broadcast news and everything. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, pretty old-fashioned companies there running NBC, CBS, and ABC back in the Vietnam War, and they just had their reporters go out there, and those reporters just wrote about the horrors of war. Hardly any cheerleading at all. I mean, there was a little bit of like, yay for us, reporting on we made it to the top of the hill, like those on the ground reporters. It's not like now. Not like now where they control, try not to show you the horror. All right. Decent video said, thanks for the thoughtful response. Well, same. I mean, you put a little bit of stuff, but then I saw my video and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fair enough. As long as you didn't just get all mad and say those things that were hurtful, then I could understand a little bit of that, because I had gone a couple times I was a little bit like, what? I think one time I was like, oh my God, I'm really getting mad. Well, I'm not a good actor. I said that, and you could tell I was like, oh my God, I'm starting to get mad because I'm trying to take it lighthearted. But then, like I said a minute ago, it's like, well, that was maybe not taking it serious enough. So whatever, I don't feel bad about any of that, but it's worth discussing how those things come about. I'm glad if now we're at a place where we just disagree on some things, agree on others. And the disagreements are the ones that are kind of always the more clear. And that's it. I don't know where there else is to go with it, though. I think we're at the understanding that we disagree, and until some other arising, I don't know. Where I would go with this, it seems like, from my point of view, you don't realize what kind of person Trump is, what he's really been doing, and why. No, you can't trust the things he says, and he's not really honest about the thing. He hasn't really been doing these things and keeping no. So we're just going to disagree on that. Though I happen to be right. We should definitely mention that. So how long? This is probably another hour-long one, right? Jesus Christ, an hour and 23 minutes. At my rate that I've had like the last year or two, this is like 6 months. This is like 2 years worth of videos these last few days. Oh, should I check the comments? There's probably nobody over there. I just use it as a broadcasting thing. Rob C is over there. See, this is probably from an hour ago. Nobody's still in there, right? Are the people that left a couple comments in there and want me to read their comments or not? I'm not really sure I wanted. I mean, the reason I do this is because it's a quick upload kind of method, and now it looks like you kind of have to if you want to have someone else in. So, um, oh, okay. All right, Rob. Oh, holy shit, there's a lot of them. Okay, that's kind of a problem. How about if I go backwards? I don't know what the fuck should I do. What do you guys think I should do? It'll take me a while to read all those, and they're all meant to be. You guys were talking to each other. I don't have to answer them all. Okay, so Rob C is yes, and Marcus is. So in that argument, yeah, you guys were discussing things, so I guess I can't go through this. Does anybody want to? Okay, here we go. This is a good one. Yeah, I'll just scan for good ones like this. Jesus Perez, Pyrrho is a Nazi. He's a lefty socialist. Must be punched. He provokes my violence against him. Frog face. Asshole sign. Oh, so nice. Oh, I see. The only violence is Antifa. Right. Okay. Yeah, there's too many, and people were all going back and forth with this Jesus guy. Let's see. Right, militant pieces kind of sounds like he agreed. Affirmative action is, yeah. But he says affirmative action is used to counteract barriers. It's not the only tool that can be used, but it is effective. That's kind of a more succinct way of what I was trying to say. Well, I'm going to rewatch this later. I will read your guys' comments. I'm interested, but I think it would be silly for me to stay here after an hour and 23 minutes. But I am thinking of having a live hangouts again, though, in which case I would definitely like to make sure, the comment stream is fed in. I really like these guys. I guess they do it based on Twitch, where they, put the comments in there. But of course, I could do a screen cap or whatever, and it's kind of cool when they're actually up there. But if not that, then like the old days, go ahead and have a broad conversation. I don't know. I've been thinking about it. I sort of not sure if I actually have an actual second wind for another decade of videos, but it's kind of hard to tell. But it feels like I have I'm over here on this other computer. That's what I'm doing. That's where I've got the comments are readable. All right, and the song was Maggot Brain by Funkadelic. This is not a test.